In this week's Tableau Tube Tuesday, I'm going to show you how to create a waffle chart using data densification. This removes the need to do any complicated blends or complicated joins. All we're going to do is kind of build out the data set. So the first thing I want to do is look at the data itself. The data source that we're provided is a simple survey. It has a field for the age group, another field for the season, and then just a single percentage number. So I don't have the data that I need to create 100 dots in this data set. So that's where the second data set comes in handy. So this is just a simple template that has 100 rows for the percentages that go from 1% to 100%. And then I'm just assigning them each a row and a column. So 1% would be at row 1, column 1 position. 10% would be at row 1, column 10, and so on and so forth. What we're going to do is we're going to join both of these files together so that I get 100 rows for each of these ages, or each of these rows in the original data set. So I have, I have 12 rows here, and I want to end up with 120 rows, or 1200 rows, sorry. So let's see how to do that. So first we need to connect to the data. And the first thing I want to do is I want to connect to the data source for the makeover buddy data source. So if I sort it, I can look at my seasonal preferences. And if I flip back over to the Excel sheet, notice how I have this one row at the top that says table 1. Well, we can use Tableau's data interpreter to take care of that for us. So up here in this, so you see Tableau has now given us F1, F2, and F3, so those are just dummy columns, and it's read in table 1. But if I use the data interpreter option over here on the upper left, Tableau can try to do some cleanup for you. So let's check that option. And now Tableau has removed that first row and taken the second row and made it the headers of our data set. That's great. Okay, so now I need to bring in my waffle chart template. So I'm going to choose Add again. And this time I'm going to choose my waffle chart template. And notice that there's no field to join them on. So I have fields like age group and season here, but in my waffle chart template I just have rows and columns. So I need to create a calculated join in order to densify the data. So in my primary data source, I'm going to click on Create Calculated Join, and I'm just going to give it some kind of dummy field, just call it 1. And then in my waffle chart template, I'm going to do the same thing. And now notice this fills out, and for each age, I'm now getting, for each age in each season, I'm now getting 100 rows. So let's call this our waffle chart densification. Let's go to our sheet. So now, if I just bring number of records into the view, you'll see that I now have 1200 records. If I bring age group and season into the view, you'll see I've created 100 marks for each of those. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and build out the template. The first thing I'm going to do is to start building it out, I'm going to just keep the age group, one age group and one season, just so we can see what it's doing, and then we can clean it all up later. So I'm going to take my my columns and rows, and those actually need to be dimensions, not measures. They're not things that I want to count. So I'm going to drag those up and make them dimensions. I'm going to put column in the columns and row in the rows, and I get 100 marks. So if I look on the bottom left of the application, you'll see I have 100 marks, 10 rows, 10 columns, exactly what I was expecting. I'm going to change the mark type to a circle, and I'm just going to create a simple calculated field that tells me which ones to color. So I'm just going to call this above, or let's say below value. So I'm going to take my preference value, so the average of my my preferences, and I want to say, is that less than or equal to the average of my percentage? That's just going to flag each dot yes or no. So I have this new measure, a Boolean measure, and I'm going to drag that onto the color shelf. And now you can see we have 25 in there. So let's go ahead and drag the preference value onto the tooltip. Actually, first we need to set the default aggregation to an average, and let's make the percentage look nice. So let's go to preferences, or default properties, number format, and set it to a percentage with 0 decimals. Okay, great. So if we take that and put it on the tooltip, you'll see I've got 26%. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this calculation again, and we see that it's less than or equal to that percentage. Okay, great. But the issue now is it looks like I don't have enough marks in the view. So if I look at my data set, I'm sorry, I didn't want to do that. So if I do a select all here, and then, or if I just do view data, you'll see I have my let me sort by rows and sort by columns. So let's do it like that. And now you can see I have all of my falses, so my preferences value is 26%. Let me actually drag my preference in here as well. And let's make that an average. Okay, so let me view the data again. And there we go. So I'm sorting by my rows and columns. And so I have my preferences value here. And this is this average percentage is the number that comes from the template. So if I scroll down to where 26% is, I now see false at 25. So it looks like I need to offset it by 1 mark. So if I look here at this point, it's saying that it's not quite right. So what I'm going to do is just change my my percentage here to plus 0.01. Now you may or may not have to do that, but you should always double check it. And oops, I did it the wrong direction. So let's see, I want to do minus 0.01. And there we go. So now I have 26 blue dots, which is what I was looking for. Okay, great. So I'm going to just so now we could take our, put our age groups and our seasons back on. So if I go back over to my view, I have my seasons going across the top and my age groups going down the side. So I'm going to put age group in the rows and put season in the columns. And if I set it to entire view, we get something like that. Now notice how mine are spaced out a bit more. That's because I made these continuous. So I'm going to go to my column shelf and make it continuous, and go to my row shelf and make it continuous. And notice how I get a bit more space now. And also, in this particular example, the dots that are colored are at the top, where I need these to be, in this particular case, they're colored at the bottom. If I want them colored at the top, all I have to do is edit my row axis and just reverse the axis if I want. Okay, so that puts them at the top, or we can put them at the bottom, whichever way you prefer. I'll leave them at the top for now. So now when I hover over my tooltip, you can see I've got a bunch of things I don't need in there, like the column, the row, the average percentage, and the below value. So for each of the fields I don't need, I'm going to right click on it and uncheck the include in tooltip. So I can get rid of that field, I don't need that, and then include in tooltip. And now you can see it tells me, no matter which dot I hover over, it tells me for 18 to 34-year-olds in the fall, it's 26%. Right, so now my seasons aren't in the correct order, so I'm actually going to change the default sort for my seasons. So I'm going to make it a manual sort, and I want to go spring, summer, fall, winter, something like that. And there we go. Is that how I did it in my original? Yeah, spring, summer, fall, winter. Okay, so now I can just hide the headers on my rows and my columns. Maybe pick some other colors. So let's say I want to change the color for my falses. Maybe I want to make this like a red, and I want to make the trues, like a grayish color. And there we go. So now I can, you can play around with it. So I use different colors for each season. For each age group. So going across, if I want to do that, I can just also add age group to the detail shelf, and then add it to the, and then click on the little dots here. So let me do that again. So let me undo. I'm going to drag age group to the detail shelf. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this little indicator, the mark type indicator next to age group. I'm going to choose color. And now I have multiple items on the color shelf. So what I want to do is then color each of these separately. So I know I want all of my grays I want each of these to be maybe a light gray. So, oops, so Seattle grays, where'd that go? Seattle grays. And I'm going to highlight those three and make them a light gray. And then I want to make each of these a distinct color. So maybe I'll start with, I don't know, maybe something green, and then I'll pick something maybe blue, and then one more, let's maybe make it orange, something like that. You want to make the colors easy enough to distinguish. Okay, so now I click off and I can see those a bit better. So the last thing I did is I kind of made my rows and my columns look a bit nicer. So I'm going to edit my aliases for my age groups and my seasons. So I'm going to edit the alias for my age groups, and I'm just going to call this one 18 to 34. The next one, I'm just going to call this one 55 plus, and then this one needs to be 35 to 44. And that makes the numbers look a bit nicer. And notice how I rotated them. So I'm just going to right click on the field and rotate the label. And then I'm going to right click on the word age group and choose to hide field labels for rows. And then at the top I can do something similar. So I wanted them all in uppercase, so that's just a simple change. So again, I'm just updating the aliases. Okay. And then I'll hide the field labels for the columns. So the last thing you do is a bit of cleanup. So you see in the background I have some reference, some grid lines and things. So I'm going to go to my borders and go to my borders and just remove my row and column dividers. And then go into my lines option. I'm going to get rid of my grid lines and get rid of my zero lines. So now we have a nice neat view. Maybe last thing I want to do is format my labels. Maybe I'll make them about 12 point, maybe semi-bold and a darker color, and then the same thing here. So 12 point, semi-bold, and a slightly darker black. All right, so we now have our view built. I'm going to go ahead and hide the card. And there we go. So now it's just a matter of sticking it onto a dashboard and formatting it. Now the last thing, you'll see that I also put numbers on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just right click on one of these numbers and go to annotate the mark. And I just want to put the preferences value in there, and I'll make it about maybe 36 point or something. And you'll see I can now just kind of move this somewhere to the middle, something like that. And but I also now have this ugly shading, so I'm going to click on the box and format it, remove the shading, and then turn the line off. And I'm going to double click on it and center that text. So there we go, and I'm going to copy that. And then you just repeat that for each of those if you want to. For the purpose of this of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and just leave one in here, and then you can download it and figure it out. So yeah, you can download this workbook if it's going to be a packaged workbook. If you unpackage it, you'll then have the two data sets that I used. And let me know if you have any questions. Have a great day.